Assalamu alaikum and hello everyone. I hope you all are doing great. Today we'll be solving the May 2024 Edexcel IAL Biology Unit 2 with detailed explanations to help you understand every concept clearly. So without any delay, let's dive right in. Question 1. A plant contains several types of cells, tissues, and organs. State what is meant by the term organ. So we know organ is a group of tissues that work together to perform a specific function. Next question. B. The photograph shows part of a cell. Okay, so before we go into the question, let's see what is in the photograph and let's know what are the letters labeled as. So we can see this circular thing. This is definitely the nucleus. So the covering of the nucleus, which is the Y, it has to be nuclear envelope. So the nuclear envelope is Y. So Y is nuclear envelope. And then we can see an even dark staining area, this part, which has to be the nucleolus. So this is the nucleolus. And then, okay, this was the nucleus. So let us label the nucleus too. So nucleus. And the last letter, X, we can see this X structure to be beside the nucleus, joined with the nucleus basically. And we know the sac-like structure that is joined with the nucleus, it has to be endoplasmic reticulum. So X is endoplasmic reticulum. Plasmic reticulum. Okay. Now let's move on to the question. Which organelle is labeled Y? Okay, we just label organelle X. Sorry, not Y. We just label organelle X as endoplasmic reticulum. So answer has to be B. Okay. Next question. The organelle is surrounded by the membrane labeled Y, contains the nucleolus. Give the name and function of the organelle that contains the nucleolus. So just some time before I said that the nucleus is this one and the organelle that contains the nucleus has to be the nucleolus. Sorry, the organelle that contains the nucleolus has to be the nucleus. So the answer should be nucleus. And the function, so we know the function of nucleus is that it contains the genetic material, which is the DNA. So it contains the genetic material. Next question. Which of the following are functions of nucleolus? 1. Production of ribosome. 2. Synthesis of DNA. 3. Synthesis of RNA. So we know ribosome is produced in the nucleolus. So yes, it's the function. Production of ribosome is a function of nucleolus. Synthesis of DNA. No, we know nucleolus, it's made of DNA, but it does not synthesize DNA. So this is wrong. Nucleolus is made of DNA, not synthesis of DNA. And 3, synthesis of RNA. This is correct. So 1 and 3 is correct. So the answer should be B, 1 and 3. And one more extra function of nucleolus is that it controls cell growth and division. Next question. Organisms can be classified into 3 domains. State which of the 3 domains would contain an organism with the organelles X and Y. So we know the 3 domains are archaea, bacteria, and eukarya. So the 3 domains are archaea, bacteria, and the third one, eukarya. So organelles X and Y has to be in eukarya. Basically, X and Y was endoplasmic reticulum and nuclear envelope. So we know Y and X both have to be in eukarya. Part 4. Organisms can be classified into three domains. State which of the three domains would contain an organism with the organelles X and Y. So we know the three domains are archaea, bacteria, and eukarya. So the three domains is archaea, bacteria, and eukarya. So the organelles X and Y, which is the nuclear envelope, here the nuclear envelope Y and endoplasmic reticulum X, so both of them has to be part of eukarya. So the answer should be eukarya. Next question. C. The drawing shows tubers of a potato plant developing below the surface of the soil. So here we can see a potato plant and there's tubers of potato. Organic molecules are transported through the potato plant to the developing tubers. These molecules can be used to form starch molecules, which structure in the cells of these tubers would store starch molecules. Okay, we know amyloplast, they store the starch molecules. So the answer should be A, amyloplast. For chloroplast, they are not found in the tuber cells below the surface of the soil. Okay, so chloroplasts, they are not found below the, basically they are not found in the tuber cells. Next question. Explain how the structure of starch enables the potato tubers to have a high energy content. Okay, so we know starch, it's a polymer of glucose and it is a compact molecule. So lots of glucose, it can be stored in the same amount of space and it can give us more energy. Next question. Question 2. Interphase and mitosis are parts of the cell cycle. A. The photograph shows a plant cell in interphase. So this cell, this is in interphase. Interphase is the part of the cell cycle when mitosis is not taking place. Which of the following processes occur during interphase? Okay, 1. Cell growth. 2. Genetic material is replicated. 3. Organelles are synthesized. So we know cell growth, genetic material replication, organelles being synthesized, all of this occur in interphase. So the answer should be all three. And if you go into the depth, cell growth occurs in G1 and G2 phase. Genetic material replicated, it occurs in S phase. Organelle is synthesized, this one occurs in G2 phase. Okay, so the answer should be D, as I said, all three. Next question. 2. The photograph shows some stages in the cell cycle V, W, X, Y, and Z. Which row shows the correct sequence in the stages in the cell cycle? Okay, so let's see. Okay, so let's first find interphase and then go on. So interphase, as we saw from this cell, has to be V. So V, I'm writing it as interphase I. Okay. Then the next stage, which is prophase. Prophase has to be Z, because here you can see the chromosomes being visible, right? So this has to be prophase. Then metaphase. Okay, we can see X as metaphase because the chromosomes are lining up across the equator. So X has to be metaphase. Then anaphase. So Y, this is anaphase because the sister chromatids, they're separated and they're pulled towards the opposite poles. So Y has to be anaphase. And the last one, W, this has to be telophase. And we can also see that the separated chromosomes, they arrived at the opposite poles. So now, let's make the sequence. So we know V should come first, okay? So all of these have V. Then we know Z has to come, prophase. So these two are crossed out, Z. And then after Z, we know it's X, metaphase. So X comes in the option C. So this is also crossed out. So the answer is C. Next question. Calculate the magnification of photograph W. Use the scale bar to help you. Okay, we know magnification. It has a formula, image size divided by actual size. And photograph W, let's see. Okay, we are given a scale bar here. But as I'm using a device, I'm using one device, everyone else is there using their own devices, and we all have different screen sizes. So depending on the screen size, the cell bar is going to come different. Okay? But I'm going to show you how to solve this when you're given a paper, because in the paper, in your exam hall, all of you are going to get the same size paper. So that time, there won't be any differences. So this is the formula, magnification, image size by actual size. And so we have to find the image size by measuring, we have to put a scale from here to here. Basically, we have to put a scale here. Then we have to measure the size, image size, from here to here. And then, we have to measure that in millimeters, okay? So we are going to measure the size. Okay, we measure the size here in millimeters. And you can see the scale bar is in micrometer. Using a scale, we cannot measure in micrometers, so we have to measure in millimeters. And then from millimeters to micrometers, we can just multiply that number in millimeters into 10 to the power 3 so that we get the micrometers and our units are same. So dash millimeters into 10 to the power 3 divided by the actual size, which was given 24 micrometer here, and this is also in micrometer now. So whatever we get as the answer, we will write that, and we have to include the X sign in front, a multiplication sign or X sign, and then write the answer of whatever we are getting. Next question. The mitotic index of a tissue was calculated. The tissue had 450 cells in mitosis and the mitotic index was 37.5%. Calculate the number of cells in this tissue that were in interphase. So we know the formula for mitotic index. It's cells in mitosis divided by the total number of cells. So we can see cells in mitosis was 37.5% here, and the total number of cells okay. B. The mitotic index of a tissue was calculated. The tissue had 450 cells, so 450 cells, and 450 cells in mitosis, and the mitotic index was 37.5%. Calculate the number of cells in this tissue that were in interphase. So we know the formula for mitotic index is cells in mitosis divided by total number of cells. So we can see that the mitotic index is given in percentage 37.5, and the cells in mitosis was 450. Here 450. So we have to find the total number of cells. So we can write okay. So here we can write 37.5 divided by 100 because this was given in percentage. So the percentage divided by 100, which is the mitotic index, equals to cells in mitosis 450 divided by the total number of cells. I'm denoting it as N. So we see N comes as 1200. Okay, so N equals to 1200. From here, from this equation, we find N equals to 1200, and we know there is already 450 cells, so we are going to subtract 1200 minus 450, which gives us 750. So that is the answer. Okay, so 750 is the answer. Next question. Describe the events that occur during prophase of mitosis. So during prophase, we know the chromatin, it condenses into visible chromosomes, the one that I was saying here. Okay, in this picture, Z. So the chromatin, it condenses into visible chromosomes. The nuclear envelope, it breaks down, and the mitotic spindle, it will begin to form as centrosomes move to opposite poles. Okay. Next question. D. Some new cells produced by mitosis are used for preparing damaged tissues. Some new cells produced by mitosis are used for growth of tissues. Give an example of a tissue that could be produced in a plant cell. So we know lots of tissues can be produced. It can be xylem, phloem, parenchyma, sclerenchyma, or spongy mesophyll, palisade mesophyll. Okay? Sorry. Yes. So second part, give one role other than for growth and repair for new cells produced by mitosis. So we know that new cells, they are produced by mitosis. They are also crucial for asexual reproduction. So not only growth and repair, they are useful for asexual reproduction. Next question. Question 3. The photograph shows a Gentoo penguin from Antarctica. So this is a penguin, a Gentoo penguin. And this penguin swim in the very cold Antarctic waters in search of food. They feed on fish, squid, and shrimp. A. Explain two anatomical adaptations of these penguins that enable them to survive in this environment. So we know anatomical adaptations, they're basically the form and structure of an organism. Okay, so anatomical adaptations, they are the form and structure of an organism. So use the information in the question to support your answer. Okay, so we know Gentoo penguins, they have a streamlined body shape. We can see them having a streamlined body shape, and they have webbed feet, and they also have strong wings that function as flippers. So reason is that these adaptations, it will allow them to swim efficiently in the cold Antarctic waters while searching for food. Okay, adaptation 2. So another one could be they have long and sharp beak and it helps them to catch and eat the prey. Here we see their prey as fish, squid, shrimp. So it helps them to eat fish, squid and shrimp, their long and sharp beaks. Okay, so we have more adaptations other than this. So we could also write the penguins. They have small surface area to volume ratio, and it's to reduce the heat loss in freezing water. So they remain in Antarctic, very cold Antarctic waters. So in order to avoid freezing, to avoid heat loss in freezing water, they have small surface area to volume ratio. Or another adaptation, it could be that they're covered in thick layer of blubber and dense waterproof feathers. It basically provides them insulation and helps to maintain their body temperature. Okay, so these are all the adaptations. Next question. The map shows 4 groups of islands that have Gentoo penguin population. So here are the 4 islands. It has been proposed that the Gentoo penguin on these 4 groups of islands are different species. Suggests one way that these penguins can be shown to belong to different species. So we know when penguins from different islands, they will breed together, they will produce infertile offspring. So when they will produce infertile offspring, this is when we will know that these penguins, they're different species. Next question. Explain how different species of Gentoo penguin could have formed. Use the map to support your answer. Okay, so from the map here, we can see that the islands are very far apart. So they will prevent the penguins from traveling between them because we can see only this much is 1500 kilometers. So from here, South Shetland Islands to this island, the distance must be thousands and thousands of kilometers. So they are very, very farther apart. And the penguins, they cannot travel between them. That's why the different populations, they cannot interbreed. And that's why no gene flow will also occur, okay, between them. And within each isolated population, the genetic variation will exist. It's because of the mutation and different alleles in the gene pool. And each island, it has unique environmental conditions. So one island is going to have different environmental conditions than the other island. So that could be climate, food availability, competition, predators. So different selection pressures that favor certain traits in each location. And that's why the penguins with the advantageous allele that is suited to that specific island's condition, they are more likely to survive and reproduce. And those beneficial traits, they'll be passed down to their offspring and the population will be more adapted to its environment over generations. And over time, the genetic differences, it will increase between the isolated populations. So the populations, they will become so genetically distinct that when they meet, they will not be able to interbreed to produce a fertile offspring. And this would also mean that they have become separate species through the process of speciation. Next question. All living organisms, they're made of cells. Some cells are specialized for the function. A. One specialized cell is a sperm cell. Draw mammalian sperm cell showing the acrosome, the nucleus, and a mitochondria. Label the acrosome, nucleus, and mitochondria. Okay. So this is how a sperm cell looks like. The acrosome, it's found in the head. There's the nucleus and the mitochondria. Next question. B. A human egg is another example of a specialized cell. 1. A human egg cell has a radius of 50 micrometer. Calculate the volume of this human egg cell. Use the formula. There was a formula V equals to 4 by 3 pi r cube. So we know the volume is 4 by 3 pi r cube. R is the radius. So it should be 4 by 3 into pi into radius is 50 micrometer. So 50 cube. So if we do that, here, this comes as the answer. So we round it off to 3 significant figures. Next question. The surface area of this egg cell is 31,416 micrometer. Give the surface area to volume ratio of this egg cell. So the surface area is 31,416 and we got the volume as 523,599. So if we divide the surface area by volume, we are going to get a ratio which is 0.06 is to 1, or basically 0.06 by 1, which we can also write as 0.06 is to 1. So the answer is 0.06 is to 1. Next question. Explain 3 ways in which a mammalian egg is specialized for its function. So we know mammalian eggs, they're haploid, so they only contain 1 copy of each chromosome. It's because the zygote is formed from the fusion of 2 haploid gametes, making it diploid. And the egg cell also has a xena pellucida, which will prevent polyspermy. And that basically means that will prevent the addition of sperm cells entering the egg. And the egg cell, it also has mitochondria, which releases energy by providing ATP. And it also has fat droplets, which will also provide energy. Next question. C. A fertilized egg cell develops into a morula and then a blastocyst. Which of the following are correct statements? 1. A blastocyst contains pluripotent stem cells. So yes, this is correct. A blastocyst, they contain pluripotent stem cells. 2. A blastocyst is a hollow ball of cells, whereas a morula is not. It is also true. And the third, both of these structures contain cells which divide by mitosis. Divide by meiosis. Here, it should be mitosis, not meiosis. So 3 is wrong. Okay? This one shouldn't be divided by mitosis instead of meiosis. So it should be mitosis. Okay, so the cells are divided by mitosis, not meiosis. So the correct answer should be 1 and 2 only, which is A. So 1 and 2. Next question. C. A fertilized egg cell develops into a morula and then a blastocyst. Which of the following are correct statements? 1. A blastocyst contains pluripotent stem cells. We know they contain pluripotent stem cells. So 1 has to be correct. 2. A blastocyst is a hollow ball of cells, whereas a morula is not. So this is also correct. 3. Both of the structures contain cells which divide by meiosis. Okay, this one is wrong because we know they divide by mitosis, right? So this is wrong. This should be mitosis, making third one wrong. So the answer should obviously be 1 and 2, which is in option A. Okay. Next question. The photograph shows a fruit fly. So this is a fruit fly. And A, the gene for eye color in this species of fruit fly has multiple alleles. Homozygous fruit flies have 2 identical alleles for eye color. The table gives some information about these alleles. Okay, so we have alleles on the left hand side, colors on the middle, and on the right hand side the darkest to the lightest color, basically the depth of color. So the ones on the top, they have the darkest color, which is red here, and as it goes down the color depth decreases, making it the lightest color. Okay, 1. These alleles are found at the same locus. State what is meant by the term locus. Okay, we know locus, it's basically the location. Yep. So locus is the location of a gene on a chromosome. Next question. Explain how these alleles can produce fruit flies with different colored eyes. So we know different alleles, they have different DNA base sequences and they will code for different polypeptide. So this might result in different polypeptide being produced, which I already said. So this different allele combinations, it will result or it may result in intermediate phenotypes, okay, because of the new polypeptide and new base sequences and everything. Next question. B. The development of an embryo into either a female or a male fruit fly is determined by 2 different proteins. The female specific DSXF protein leads to the development of a female fly, and the male specific DSXM protein results in a male fly. Both proteins are the product of the same gene. Explain how this gene can give rise to either a female or a male fly. So we know the post-transcriptional modification, it will occur. So the RNA will be spliced during the processing of DSX pre-mRNA. So the introns, which we know as the non-coding segments or non-coding regions, they'll be removed by enzymes, which are called spliceosomes, and they will form mature mRNA. And the exons, which are the coding regions, they'll be rearranged or removed if needed, and that will lead to the production of 2 distinct mRNA variants. So one will be for the male, one will be for the females. And the processed mRNA, it will undergo translation, and we know in mRNA to protein, it's translation, so it will produce a polypeptide chain, and the sequence of amino acid, they will differ in males and females because they have different or alternative splicing of exons. And the DSXF protein, which is found in females, this will lead to female specific development, while the DSXM protein, it will direct the male specific development by it will influence cell differentiation, protein interactions, tissue formation. Okay, so this is the answer. Next question. C. The histone modification can affect gene expression as shown in the diagram. Okay, so one we see is for gene switched off, and the other we see is for gene switched on. Explain how histone modification can affect gene expression. Use the diagram to support your answer. Okay, so in gene switched off, we see the histones being wrapped around the DNA, and it has histone methylation. Okay, so there's your histone methylation, and in the gene which is switched on, it has histone acylation. This one's histone acylation. So histone methylation, we can see that we know that it involves the addition of methyl group to the histone, and it's typically of lysine or arginine, and this will cause the histones to pack more tightly together here. The histones, they're packed more tightly together, so they will make the DNA more condensed, which we know as the term, which we know as heterochromatin. So the RNA polymerase and the transcription factors, they cannot access the DNA. So this will make the gene being switched off. Here we can see the gene switched off. And basically it means it will be silenced and it will not be transcribed. And the histone acylation, we see in the picture below that. So the histone acylation, we know it involves the addition of acetyl group, which is the COCH3 group. And this will cause the histones to be spaced farther apart. So these histones, they're spaced even farther apart, and it will make the DNA less tightly wrapped, which we call as euchromatin. So that's why the RNA polymerase and the transcription factors, they can bind to the DNA, and that will lead to the DNA being switched on here, which basically means that they'll be expressed and transcribed. So the diagram, it basically illustrates that when histones are methylated, the gene is switched off, and when histones are acylated, the gene is switched on, and the transcription, it can occur. So here is the answer. Next question. Water is important for plants. There are pores in the surface of the leaf which are formed by guard cells. Changes to the guard cells cause the pores to open or close. The diagram shows guard cells. So here are the guard cells. At the same time of the day, from a wheat plant without water stress and from a wheat plant that has water stress. So on the left hand side, we can see the guard cell without the water stress, and on the right hand side, a guard cell with water stress. When a plant is not given sufficient water for a period of time, it develops water stress. So we can see that when the plant is not given water for some period of time, it will develop a water stress, which is on the right picture. So this picture on the right, it wasn't provided with water or enough water for a period of time. So this can have several effects on the plant. One effect is to close the pores in the leaves. This occurs due to changes in the guard cell. So name the structure labeled X. Where is X? Okay, we can clearly see that X. Here, we can clearly see that X is the vacuole. So this X here, this is this vacuole, also this vacuole, okay? So yeah, X is vacuole. Two, suggest why the closing of the pores reduce water stress in the plant. So we know less water, it will diffuse out of the stomata, so they will prevent water loss by transpiration through pores. Next question. B. Another effect is a reduction in the absorption of mineral ions, for example, magnesium ions. Magnesium ions are needed in the formation of chlorophyll. The effect of water stress on the chlorophyll content of a wheat plant was investigated. The results are shown in the graph. So we see the graph with water stress and no water stress, and on the y-axis the chlorophyll content of wheat plants. What is the percentage change in the chlorophyll content when the wheat plant has water stress? Okay, so with water stress, we have to find the difference or change, percentage change. So, here, if we see, we can see that this line here, it goes to 1.7, right? So 1.7 mg per dm cube. And for no water stress, this is so this is 32. Yep, this should be 3.2, not 32. So 3.2 mg per dm cube. So we have to find the percentage change. So we know to find the change, basically we have to subtract these two values. So 1.7 minus 3.2, because we have to find the percentage change when the wheat has water stress. So water stress minus the no water stress value, so which is 1.7 minus 3.2, and as it's a change, so we have to divide that by 3.2 with the one with no water stress, and that, as it's a percentage, we multiply by 100. So it's not just the change but the percentage change. So multiply by 100, it gives us minus 46.875. Yes, so this is the value that we get. So let's see the options. In option B, we see minus 46.9. So yeah, if we round off our value, so this should also give us minus 46.9. So yes, this is the answer. So answer is B, minus 46.9. As the percentage, it's decreasing, right, from no water stress to water stress. So we can easily deduce that it has to be a negative value. Let's go to the next question. C, the graph shows 3 more effects of water stress on wheat plants. Graph A shows the effect of water stress on percentage survival rate. Okay, so this one has water stress and no water stress versus the mean percentage survival. B, the graph B shows the effect of water stress on cellulose content. And for graph C, it shows us the effect of water stress on root length. So deduce how water stress could affect the growth of wheat plants. Use information from the whole of question 6 and your own knowledge to support your answer. So we have to use the whole of question 6 plus our own knowledge. So let's start with graph A. So the mean percentage survival of wheat plants. So we can see the percentage survival of wheat plants, it decreases under water stress. Here it decreases. And this basically indicates that fewer plants, they can survive when they have prolonged water deficiency. And the water stress plants in graph B, we can see that they have lower cellulose content also. So their cellulose content, it is lower than the ones with no water stress, and basically this will lead to a thinner and weaker cell walls. So this will reduce the structural support and the tensile strength that the cell wall gives us, and this weaker cell walls, it will reduce the plant stability and growth. So basically whatever cellulose contributes to the plant cell, so that will be reduced. And for graph C, the water stress plants, they develop shorter roots, we can see that, and this will limit the absorption of water and mineral ions because of shorter roots. And we know that these mineral ions and water, they're essential for plant growth and metabolism. So the water stress, it will reduce the chlorophyll production because less magnesium ions will be absorbed. And we know that chlorophyll is needed for photosynthesis. So this will less chlorophyll will lead to less light being absorbed and lower photosynthetic activity. So the less water, it will result in reduced photosynthesis, and it will affect the production of glucose and other molecules because we know from photosynthesis. In photosynthesis, the light energy is absorbed and it produces glucose, and the less beta glucose basically will lead to reduced cellulose synthesis because cellulose is made of beta glucose, so it will be reduced. And the less alpha glucose, it will affect respiration because we know alpha glucose is needed to make glycogen. So glucose is basically stored in the form of glycogen in our body in humans. So without glycogen being stored, when we are respiring, the glycogen, it cannot be broken down into glucose, and glucose cannot be used up in respiration, or less amount will be used up, so that is where it's needed. And the fewer nitrates, it will result in the reduced amino acid, protein, DNA, chlorophyll, and that will impair the growth. And the calcium ions, it will basically make less calcium pectate. So our middle lamella, which is made up of calcium pectate, will be weakened, and it will reduce the cell adhesion. And this everything will affect the overall plant strength and stability. So the closure of stomata due to water stress, it will lead to reduced transpiration and reduced gas exchange. So the plants without transpiration, they will lose turgidity, and it will wilt, and it will have stunted growth. And the reduced protein synthesis, cell division, mitosis, energy production, it will result in less overall growth and lower crop yield. Okay. So basically we realize that whole of question 6, we use the whole question about magnesium ions and chlorophyll content and everything else, the water stress, no water stress part, and our own knowledge. So in our own knowledge, we described how the mean percentage would affect by fewer plants surviving due to less water or due to water deficiency. And another own knowledge was used when we said about cellulose content, that being lower will weaken the cell walls and will reduce the structural support, tensile strength. So that was own knowledge. And everything about photosynthesis, respiration, glucose, and alpha glucose, and magnesium ions, all that, those are own knowledge. So yes, let me show the answer. So this is the first part of the answer. And the second part. Okay, guys, I hope you're enjoying the way that I'm solving the question paper. So if you find my explanations helpful and want me to solve more past papers with me, you can join our question paper marathon course for the May 2025 session and for the October 2025 or January 2026 candidates. We have our high impact crash course that is designed to maximize your preparation. The details of both the courses will pop up on your screen in a moment, so be sure to check them out. And if you want to learn more, feel free to message us on our Facebook page, Exam Essentials, or you can WhatsApp us at the number that is provided in the description box. So let's continue with the rest of the paper. Question 7. The photograph shows a mother and baby Malayan tapir Tapirus indicus is the scientific name. So they live in the rainforest of Southeast Asia. Each gamete of a Malayan tapir, it contains 26 chromosomes. So the body cells of the mother Malayan tapir have some genetic similarities to and differences from the cells of her baby. So explain why body cells of the mother and baby have genetic similarities and differences. So we can see from the question that the gamete will have 26 chromosomes. So the baby will obviously inherit the 26 chromosome, which is half of the total chromosome. Because we know gamete cells, they have half of the total chromosomes. So it will the baby will also inherit 26 chromosomes from the mother's egg cell. So half from the mother's egg cell. So those will obviously be identical, or they'll be at least similar to the mother's body cells. And the baby will also inherit the other half, 26 chromosomes, from the father's sperm cell. So these chromosomes, they're genetically different from the mother's chromosome. So that will lead to genetic variation. So half chromosome from mother having the same or identical characteristics, and half from the father's sperm cell, which will give us the genetic variation. Also, the chromosomes that are inherited from the mother, they may not exactly be identical all the time because of mutation or crossing over, okay? So crossing over, we know it occurs during meiosis when the genetic material is exchanged between the homologous chromosomes. So they will create new combinations of genes. And mutations, which I said, so they will also introduce slight differences in the genetic sequence. Next question. B. Biodiversity within a species can be measured using genetic diversity. 3 melanistic Malayan tapirs have been discovered that have black fur all over their bodies. Melanistic tapirs have 2 copies of the recessive allele for fur color and are homozygous. So 1. Scientists wanted to determine the heterozygosity index. Okay, heterozygosity index of the Malayan tapir species. So which equation can be used to calculate the heterozygosity index? So we know the heterozygosity index is basically the number of heterozygotes divided by the number of individuals in the population. It's in the book. So you can find exactly the same equation. So basically the option A, it's correct. So the answer should be A. Okay. Next question. Explain how scientists could determine if a change in the frequency of the recessive allele was occurring over time. So we know we can count the number of tapirs and the melanistic tapirs in the population, and we can use the Hardy-Weinberg equation so that we can calculate the recessive allele frequency, and then we can compare the previous allele frequency with the new one to see if it has changed. And here below, I also included from an extract from the book about the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. So if anyone is confused about what the Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium is, we can see it from here that it states that in a population that is not evolving, the allele frequencies, it will remain stable from one generation to the next, okay? So allele frequencies, they remain stable. And if there is no evolutionary influences, if the population is evolving, the allele frequency will also change from generation to generation. So that's why it will not remain in equilibrium. So the allele frequency is going to change. And when a new species is formed, the gene flow will be reduced because there will be no more breeding between the two original populations. So the Hardy-Weinberg equation, it provides us with a model of theoretical stable population. So basically it will use the main use is in calculating allele and gene frequencies in the population genetics. So it will provide us with a means of measuring and studying changes. So this equation basically is the Hardy-Weinberg equation. So P square plus 2PQ plus Q square equals to 1. So P square is the frequency of homozygous dominant in the population, and Q square, it's the frequency of homozygous recessive. So Q is the homozygous recessive, P is the homozygous dominant, and 2PQ is basically the heterozygous genotype in the population. And all of that, summation of all of that will be equal to 1. And another formula we know is that P plus Q equals to 1. So this can also be used when calculating. Next question. C. The map shows the changes in the distribution of the Malayan tapir over the past 20 years. So here we see the map, the current distribution, the darker areas, and the earlier distribution or the lighter areas. Give one similarity between the current and earlier distribution of the Malayan tapir. So here we can see that both the current distribution and the earlier distribution, it was found in the same region. So we can see from this map that both the current distribution and the earlier distribution, they're found in the same region or same space, or you could say same country. So that's the similarity. One difference is that the distribution has reduced due to human activity. So just one reason why human activity has caused this change in distribution. So we know we humans, we are cutting down the trees, which is deforestation. So that is causing loss of habitat and food. Or basically the number of tapirs, they're reducing due to hunting. We humans, we are hunting. So any human activity that reduces their number will be the answer. So the two most common ones are deforestation and hunting. Next question. A study suggested that the genetic diversity of the Malayan tapir has decreased due to populations being separated from each other. Explain how a captive breeding program could help maintain the genetic diversity of Malayan tapir populations. So, in order to answer this question, we know we have to first identify and analyze the alleles of the individual tapirs so that we can assess the genetic diversity. So this will basically help in selecting the individuals with different alleles for breeding. And then we use a stud book, which is basically a record of the breeding history and the genetic information of each of the tapir. And it will help us in tracking genetic lineages, and it will avoid inbreeding. So the tapirs from different populations or with different alleles, they should be bred together so that they have the so that their genetic variation is maintained for future generations. And then we carefully select the breeding pairs. The program prevents the loss of the alleles from the gene pool, and this will help maintain a healthy and genetically diverse population. So that is the answer. Next question. Question 8. The photograph shows a species of fungus growing on a dead tree in a woodland habitat. We see a fungus growing on a dead tree. The wood contains a high proportion of lignin and cellulose. So fungi, it can break down molecules in wood by releasing extracellular enzymes. So A, describe the role of the rough endoplasmic reticulum in the formation of extracellular enzymes. So we know rough endoplasmic reticulum, and there the translation it occurs, and the ribosomes, they join with the amino acids and they form peptide bonds. By forming peptide bonds, basically they form a polypeptide from amino acids, and this will form the secondary structure, which is the alpha helix and the beta pleated sheaths, and the tertiary structure by the 3D shape. And this will basically cause the formation of hydrogen bonds, the different bonds, hydrogen bonds, covalent bonds, ionic bonds, and disulfide bridges. So the polypeptide that is formed, it will be packaged into a transport vesicle and it will be transported to Golgi apparatus. Okay, so this question is important, so try to remember all the steps. It's an easy question, but remembering all the steps could be hard or challenging at least. So remember the steps. Next question. Different species of fungus can break down different molecules in wood. The effect of two species of fungus on the percentage loss in mass of food and blocks was investigated. Species A, it was grown on one set of wood blocks, and species B was grown on another set of wood blocks. So here we see species A, the whiter ones, and species B, the darker ones. The percentage loss in mass of the blocks was recorded every 4 weeks. So the graph shows the results. So it was basically 4th week, 8th week, 12th week, and 16th week. And on the y-axis, it's the mean percentage loss in mass for both species A and species B. Comment on the results of this investigation. So here we can see that as the time increased, the mean percentage loss in mass for both species and species A and B, it increases. So here we see increase for A, increase for B too. But for species A, we can see it's higher, which is basically like the higher percentage mass loss at each time point. So the error bars, they basically do not overlap. You can see the error bars not overlapping. So they prove that there is a significant difference between the two species, okay? The error bars for each of them, they never overlap. So we can say that there is a significant difference between the two species. So whenever error bars do not overlap, there's always a significant difference. And one more important thing to always include is that whenever there's error bars in the question and we have to comment on the results of investigation or explain the graph or whatever it is, for most of the time, the three most common points, which we already saw it in this question too, is that first, we have to identify the trend, if it's increasing or decreasing or whatever. So here we see for both of them, it's increasing. So that's one point. Another point is that for which one it's increasing more and for which one it's increasing less, okay? Like at the rate of increase is more and rate of increase is less. So we have to identify that one too. And the third point is that overlapping of error bars, okay? If they overlap, then there is no significant difference. If they do not overlap, there is a significant difference, okay, between the two, whatever values we are given. So in this one, we are given species A and species B. So we could say about that. So these 3 points are always included in the mark scheme. So that's like a general way to answer these questions and easily get 3 marks. You can just input whatever the information given in the question and then just write the answer. So the answer for this question is this one. Next question. Suggest one reason for the difference in breakdown of the wood by species A and species B. So we know that species A and B, they produce different enzymes. And species A, they can break down cellulose as well as lignin, which is why this is the difference between those two species. Next question. C. A study compared the biodiversity of two woodland habitats. The index of diversity for habitat 1 was 4.2, and we are given the table for habitat 2. So we see species, um, number of individuals, and n minus 1. So we first have to find the number of, okay, let's go to the question and then see what do we have to find out. So an index of diversity D, it was calculated using this formula. The formula is given. So we have to calculate the index of diversity for habitat 2. So for habitat 1 we are only given. For habitat 2 we are given the graph. So from here we have to calculate. So to calculate the value of D, we have to find n, capital N, n minus 1, and small n, n minus 1. So here, we're gonna get the capital N, n minus 1 from here, and small n, n minus 1 from here, basically summation of all of them. So we can see that small n, here it's 27, so it should be 27, 27 minus 1. For the C's one here, this should be 27 and 27 minus 1, basically n minus 1. So this should give us 702. And for, okay, we are done with finding all the values. So now it's time to calculate capital N, n minus 1 and small n, n minus 1. So we are going to get capital N, n minus 1 from here, and small n, n minus 1, we have to add all of this here. So if we do it, this should come as this one, sorry. Yes. So this capital N, it should be 231. Basically the summation of the whole thing. Summation of this, all of them, it comes as 231. And on the right hand side, we can find the summation of small n, n minus 1 by adding all of these values. So we get small n, n minus 1 as 17148, 17,148 basically. So if we go to the question, so we know D, it should be 231, the capital N, and then this is again 231 minus 1, and in below, in the denominator, we already found out this one, which is 17,148. So we are going to divide both of them, and if we divide, we should get this value, which is the answer, which is 3.098 as the value of index of diversity D. Let's go to the next question. State which habitat has higher biodiversity. Give a reason for your answer. Okay, so for habitat 2, we found out the biodiversity or index of biodiversity as 3.098. And in the question, it was given for biodiversity, index of biodiversity for habitat 1, which was 4.2, which receives this as the higher value. So we know the higher the index of diversity, the higher will be the biodiversity. So for habitat 1, it's going to have a higher biodiversity. Okay, next question. And the very last part of this paper, 3, species D is an endangered plant species. Explain the processes that could be used by a seed bank to conserve this plant species. So we know seed bank, it's basically an example of ex situ conservation. So seed bank. We know seed bank is an example of ex situ conservation. So basically, first we are going to gather the seeds from multiple plants of species D, so that we can ensure that the genetic diversity, and then we're going to wash, disinfect, or we can sterilize the seeds so that we can remove the decomposing microbes and we can prevent contamination. And thirdly, the x-ray. We have to x-ray the seeds to check for viability, and we have to confirm the presence of an embryo inside. Then we freeze, or we can dry the seeds and store them at very, very low temperatures, so to prevent germination. Or we could maintain the viability, or to reduce the enzyme activity at lower temperatures, or keep the microbes from growing. And lastly, we germinate, grow, and we pollinate the genetically different plants so that we can produce new plants for long-term conservation. So this is the answer. And with the answer, I have also included a small extract from the book again, where the answer was kind of written. So from the book, we can see that it was written that a seed bank, it can preserve many plants in a state of effective suspended animation. So we see the live seeds being collected from the wild. We see they're being removed from fruits and cleaned. They're screened using X-rays so that we know they contain fully developed embryos. Then they're dried, put into jars, and they're stored between -20 to -40 degrees Celsius, which is the low temperature. So basically the book, it also had the same answer as the mark scheme. So that's it for today. I hope this session was helpful to you. And if you found it useful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more exam focused content. And see you all in the next one. Till then, take care and keep practicing.